So candidates, welcome once again back to AHR's IS Institute. We'll be continuing our discussion on the November issue of Yojana. And in this part, we'll be discussing about some other articles as well as certain sections which are very essential and very important from prelims perspective. So they have given a small little article on Himanch. So what is Himanch? India's high remote altitude station. Okay. It is conceived by the National Center for Antarctic and Ocean Research, which also comes under the Ministry of Earth Sciences. So it's a government initiative. And the objective is to better study and quantify the Himalayan glacier responses towards the climatic change. Now, it is located in Spiti Valley at an altitude of 13,500 feet or 4,000 meters. What is the significance of this? Is maybe next year they could ask you about glacier retreating. Okay. Because climate change has had a huge impact on glaciers, and this melting of glaciers is adding to the rising sea levels. There are ominous signs, and glacier melting is also observed in the Himalayan region. Now, since the glacier melting is observed in the Himalayan region, it becomes important, and therefore a question in GS paper 1 could appear, or they could also ask you about what is Himanch in PT. So glacier retreat and its study and to quantify Himanch has been conceived and designed. Also remember that it comes under the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Whichever ministry or department is responsible for a project is something that is a pet topic of UPSC and therefore could be given as a question statement. Okay, so this is about Himanch. What are the instruments which are going to be used? Now we are going into a little bit of depth here, not because it could be asked in PT, but essentially it's because basically it could be essential or beneficial from the mains answer writing point of view. So इसमें से अगर आपको तीन चार भी चीजें याद है या even if you end up recalling two things out of these, then it will definitely add a lot of glitter to your answer. Okay. So एक बार पढ़ लीजिए automatic weather stations for weather monitoring, water level recorder for quantifying the glacier melt, ground penetrating radar to know the thickness of the glaciers, geodetic GPS system to study the glacier movement, snow forks for studying snow thickness, and can be used for undertaking surveys using terrestrial laser scanner, that is TLS. Unmanned aerial vehicles will also be used that would digitize the glacier motion. So such things, if mentioned in your answers, could definitely help you get more marks. Although I would say that PT में ये नहीं पूछेंगे. So for PT, the last slide was important. You can go through that slide once again. So in India's tax system, it's about increasing progressivity. How can you bring more progressivism in your tax structure? Okay. So what are the highlights of this article? It's linkage with public finance and taxation structure. Important for prelims and mains, and will give you many fodder points. इसमें काफी सारे basic concepts इस article में cover किए गए हैं. The article name is India Tax System Increasing Progressivity. Okay. So these are the basic salient features of this article. Moving along, let us look at what are the responsibilities of the government. Obviously, ensuring rule of law is the first and foremost prerogative of the government. Beyond that, providing public goods and services also becomes one of the essential objectives of the government. Building physical and social infrastructure is indispensable to any government. It has to do it. It has to lay down plans and policies and programs in a manner that it enriches the physical infrastructure and also strengthens the social infrastructure of the country. Investing in education, party and other sectors also is one of the essential responsibilities of the government. For that, the government obviously has to mobilize a lot of resources. And what kind of resources I'm talking about? I'm talking about financial resources. Okay. Because obviously there are no free lunches, right? Everything has a cost, and that cost has to be borne by the government. And if that cost has to be borne by the government, obviously it has to mobilize the resources. So what are the sources? The sources would be taxes, user fees or service charges, and borrowings. Taxes हमें पता है, direct taxes or indirect taxes. Now, user fees and service charges would be, for example, you pay a certain fee to get your license at the RTO. You get a certain, you have to pay a certain fee to get your passport done, or for your passport renewal also. And borrowings from international institutions like IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, also borrowings from the RBI or even the public. These are the sources of the funding for the government. As you can see, we were talking about the sources of funding for the government. Now there are two sources of funding for the government. The one would be revenue receipts and the other would be capital receipts. What are these revenue receipts? They are divided into two parts, that is tax and non-tax revenue, right? So revenue receipts neither create liabilities nor reduce assets. Means what? देखिए revenue receipts जो है वो रोजमर्रा का जो इंडिया का खर्चा है उसमें जाएगा, like paying the salaries and the pensions of people. Okay, so इसमें कोई assets नहीं बन रहे हैं, ठीक है, और reduce भी नहीं हो रहा है, इसलिए इन्हें revenue receipts कहा जाता है। और कोई liability भी नहीं बन रहा है क्योंकि कोई लोन नहीं ले रहे हैं आप। Whereas capital receipts में अगर आप देखेंगे तो borrowing is a huge component of that. When you take a loan from the World Bank or IMF, it is to the tune of millions of dollars, right? So it creates a liability. Although it is meant for creation of asset, but it also creates liabilities because that loan has to be paid back. So there are two types of receipts and these are the funding for the government. Now direct taxes and indirect taxes. The burden of the tax falls on the entity that is being taxed. In indirect taxes, the tax burden can be shifted or passed on to other person, right? जैसे कि when a shopkeeper sells a thing to you, you are basically paying a MRP on that. That is maximum retail price. What is that maximum retail price? It is inclusive of all taxes. So it is actually that the tax burden is shifted from the shopkeeper to the consumer, right? Therefore, indirect taxes can be shifted from one person to another. But direct taxes can never be shifted from one person to another because they are levied on an individual or a corporation, right? So nobody else has the responsibility to pay those taxes. Now, let us talk about, there is a division of taxation powers between center and the states. So there is a system which we follow wherein center will levy some taxes and the state will also levy some taxes, right? Now, there is a three-tiered taxation system in the country. Central government will levy some taxes, the state government will also levy some taxes, and the local body will also levy some taxes. The local body that levies taxes would also include octroi and other things, right? So there is a three-level of taxation system already in the country. Now, to look at it further, understand that this article will have a lot of further points for your prelims and also for your mains. So central government, it has the power to levy taxes on corporations and personal income, as I told you, right, except for the tax on agricultural income which the state government can levy. तो आपको पीटी में क्वेश्चन दिया जा सकता है और उसमें एग्रीकल्चर एक ऑप्शन रहेगा, बट एग्रीकल्चर को मार्क नहीं कीजिए बिकॉज सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट डजंट लेवी टैक्सेस ऑन एग्रीकल्चरल इनकम, इट इज द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट व्हिच डज इट. ओके, सो डायरेक्ट इनकम की बात होगी तो एग्रीकल्चरल इनकम विल बी waived off or be an exception for that. Okay, excise duties on production and manufacturing, ये भी सारी चीजें will be levied by the central government. Service tax on service provided. When we go to a restaurant, there is a service tax in your bill. That component is levied by the central government. Always remember that. State government. Now, when it comes to the role of state government in taxation, it is about tax on sale of goods that in the form of sales tax, stamp duty, state excise, land revenue, duty on entertainment, and tax on professions. Okay, so these are the taxes which come under the state government. So make a list of these, paste it on your wall and commit it to your memory would be my simple advice to you. The system of sales tax levied by the state government has been replaced with value added tax service since 2005. All of us are in the knowledge that value added tax is the new form of taxation which the state government has envisaged. In that, a lot of other taxes are subsumed under that, and therefore value added tax becomes a overarching umbrella tax which is to be levied by the state government. Always remember that, and it is in function since 2005. Now local bodies, it talks about tax on properties, octroi, tax on market, and user charges. Okay, so this slide is very, very important from the PT perspective. Since GST is in the news, maybe next year you will be asked a question based on taxation policy in India or about direct or indirect taxes. So be prepared for it. whenever you feel the need and the time, or you have the time, come back to this video and also go through all the slides, rewatch them. It's not long, it's about 30 minutes, won't take too much of your time. So my sincere request to you is rewatch it once again. Now, when do imbalances arise? Imbalances, according to the writer, arise when between the taxation power and expenditure responsibilities of the center and states respectively. That taxation power किसका है और expenditure की responsibility किसकी? Like there are many subjects which come under the state in the list, right? There is a state list, there is a union list, and there is a concurrent list if you know your polity. Now, if a topic or if a sector comes under the state list, what will happen is the state would want some funds for that. But if the center is levying taxes and is collecting taxes, it is not going to the state. So the state would feel that there is injustice and there is imbalance. So the state would feel burdened or stressed out to carry out development and welfare activities in that particular sector because it is not getting enough revenues, right, in the form of revenue receipts. Now, the role of Finance Commission, it is to recommend sharing of financial resources to mitigate or remediate this particular imbalance that we talked about. Now, 14th Finance Commission के बारे में आप थोड़ा पढ़ लीजिए. A background on 14th Finance Commission is very essential. If you do that, I think it will go a long way in securing good marks in the examination, especially for students who have public administration as an optional or for students who have economics as an optional, right? So 42% of the shareable or the divisible pool of central tax revenue to states every year. Till now, it was about 32%, but after the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission, it has been elevated to 42%. So what is not included in the shareable pool? Okay, shareable pool / divisible pool might become a confusing term for you. So to simplify matters, let me tell you that the shareable pool would not include cesses, surcharges, taxes of union territories, and the amount equivalent to the cost of collection of central taxes. ये भी एक लिस्ट आपको याद रहनी चाहिए कि शेयरेबल पूल में क्या है और क्या नहीं. पीटी में अगर ऐसा डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन आ गया कि which of these is not a part of the central divisible pool or the shareable pool, then you should know that cesses, surcharges, taxes of union territories, and the amount equivalent to the cost of collection of central taxes is definitely not a part of that. Okay. Now, what are cesses? Cesses are basically tax only. It's like Swachh Bharat cess, Krishi Kalyan cess, Education cess, coal cess. So जो भी टैक्स लेवी होता है वो पर्टिकुलर चीजों में ही जाएगा. जैसे कि अगर एजुकेशन सेस है तो whatever amount that is collected will only go into the development and proliferation of education in the country. Likewise, if there is Swachh Bharat cess, then that would definitely go into improving the hygiene and sanitation standards and sewage treatment plants in the country. Okay, so cesses are basically tax forms of taxes only, but meant for a particular project or a plan or a scheme. Okay, this is something that you should know. So tax to GDP ratio. Tax to GDP ratio के ऊपर 2015 में they have already asked a question. So it becomes an important element in our economy. So now it is important indicator for tax collection. Higher tax GDP ratio means what? More money will be available for agriculture. Right? India में tax to GDP ratio, it continues to remain low. Okay. The lowest tax to GDP ratio amongst the BRICS countries. Now this is a very sound piece of information or a very peculiar piece of information. Why would I say that? It's basically because BRICS countries के ऊपर कोई question आता है and if you are asked to compare their economies या economy based कोई question आएगा GS3 में, so this becomes a very valid form of information wherein you can simply say that India में tax to GDP ratio among the big BRICS countries कम है, मतलब amongst the developing countries or economies in transition we are not doing too great and therefore there is greater need for ushering in tax reforms, and for that GST and DTC have to be applied in an earnest manner. Okay, so indirect taxes in India are regressive and direct tax are progressive. ये बहुत important statement है, हो सकता है elaborate करने के लिए पूछा जाए या हो सकता है कि critically examine करने के लिए पूछा जाए. अब मैंने आपको पहले ही बता दिया है कि डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस प्रोग्रेसिव क्यों है, क्योंकि जैसे जैसे आपका इनकम बढ़ते जाता है आपका टैक्सेशन भी बढ़ेगा, आपका रेट ऑफ टैक्स व्हिच इज लेविड अपॉन योर इनकम विल आल्सो इंक्रीज. सो दैट मींस दैट द डायरेक्ट टैक्स सिस्टम इन इंडिया इज प्रोग्रेसिव. right? But the indirect tax system in India is regressive is because कि indirect taxes तो सभी pay कर रहे हैं, right? So the amount of money or the amount of indirect taxes that one pays for a mobile handset is same for a poor person also, for a middle income person also, for a rich person also. That means indirect taxes are levied uniformly upon the population regardless of their levels of income. But is it fair? Should it be done? Pata nahi, right? So we make sure, or also indirect taxes का जो collection in India में, that is more than 60% of the tax collected. Therefore, there is a need to make indirect taxes more progressive and not regressive the way they are right now. And GST might just help us to bridge that gap. Okay. Now, what are the problems in the current system? Cascading effect of taxes. What is the cascading effect of taxes? When taxes are high, what happens is, as I told you, people end up spending more on paying taxes. When they end up paying more on paying taxes, what happens is their disposable income goes down. When disposable income goes down, their consumption goes down. When consumption in the local economy goes down, domestic demand goes down. When domestic demand goes down, production and manufacturing comes to a standstill. So when production comes to a standstill, it leads to a general economic slowdown. Next is multiple taxes imposed by different states and central government. I have told you about the overlapping taxes. I have also told you that before the VAT regime, कैसे different types of taxes were levied by the state government. So this multiple taxation system, which arises because of imbalance of tax collection and levy between the center and the states, actually impedes the growth process and also slows down the investment in the economy. It also leads to dis-saving because saving कम होगा because people are paying more money in the form of taxes. So savings and investment will also be hit. Also savings and investment rate को आप cascading effect of taxes में भी लगा सकते हैं. जैसे कि tax बढ़ेगा तो savings and investment in the economy will come down. Okay, so it gives also the current system is so complicated and so and the rates are also high. That means that it gives enormous scope for tax evasion. There people will feel the need to go for tax evasion primarily because the rates are very high and also the structure is also complicated. Because of that, there is an inherent tendency amongst people to evade taxes. And no wonder we see that only 2% of the people in India are paying taxes today. So this problem or malice of tax evasion should be tackled in a very efficient manner, right? Therefore, I have written it in bold. The probable solution for that would be goods and services tax. Coming to the last leg of this lecture, we need to see what are the components of GST, because there could be a question on the modalities and technicalities associated with goods and services tax. So one is a central tax and one is a state tax. So there is going to be a central GST as well as there is going to be a state GST. Now, according to the committee headed by Arvind Subramaniam, the number of the rates is likely to be limited to standard rate to be levied upon majority of goods and services. There is no need of explaining anything in this. Lower rates on merit goods and essential items. जो essential items है, जो रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में काम में आते हैं, obviously उनके ऊपर lower rates रहेंगे. And higher rate on non-merit goods like luxury goods. Okay. So luxury goods में higher rates रहेंगे. So that will compensate for the lower rates on merit goods. Okay. Petroleum, alcohol, tobacco are to be excluded. Okay. Because these are considered as sin goods. Now, what is the conclusion? That GST has to be implemented earnestly to restore or to make the situation more palatable in the Indian economy. Increase compliance ताकि लोग ज़्यादा टैक्स भरे. Voluntary tax formulations होने चाहिए. अभी सिर्फ 2% हो रहे हैं. Increase direct taxes जो progressive है उनको और थोड़ा बढ़ा देना चाहिए. Increase progressivity of Indian tax structure by making indirect taxes also progressive. So this is how your conclusion should be modeled upon. Okay. So with this we come to the end of part 2 of Yojana issue November. In the next part we'll be concluding with the Yojana issue of November. So in these 3 parts you will be able to get a gist of Yojana. We have tried to encapsulate that within a time limit of 80 to 90 minutes. So please go through these videos over and over again. I wish you all the best, and we also wish that we also hope that in the future we'll come up with issues of Yojana and also other magazines. So for now, I'll see you. Good night.